folks, welcome back to Nubian Divinity. I'm Mel, coming with a little bit of a different format this time in my video. I have no cards. I tend to do readings and promote some of my work a little bit, but I've been meaning to make this video for a really long time as sort of the catalyst and the push into the continuation of my content creation and what it is that I envision for Nubian Divinity. But most importantly, before I continue on, what is Nubian Divinity? Where has it come from? What does it mean? What can you expect from it? These are questions that I would be asking myself if I was on the other side of this. So I'm using this opportunity to kind of take you into my thought process and take you into what it is that I'm hoping to give and bring to the world with Nubian Divinity. Let's talk about what the name in itself means and also how it started, which is through tarot reading and through spiritual work. So Nubian Divinity came to me mid-pandemic 2021. I've been doing tarot. Okay, let's see. How do I start? How did I first get into readings, into tarot, right? That's the first question that a lot of people tend to ask and want to know. So I remember I was gifted, or I found a tarot deck rather, first time when I was 16 years old. I found it at a random dollar store in Ottawa. I grew up in an environment where occult practices and these types of activities weren't really fostered and welcomed, which is really interesting because I was raised quite Catholic and my grandma was extremely Catholic. And one of the things that we used to do, and I don't know if you remember this for my Catholic people out there, Roman Catholic specifically, if you had these daily breads, and I have something actually quite similar to it. One second. So I found this set of cards recently that reminded me of the types of cards that my grandma and I used to pull together in the morning, where she would say that she wants a message from Christ or from the Holy Spirit and to see what Spirit had to say today. So for example, okay, this is exactly what it was, but instead of having like a message like on a tarot card, it had a biblical verse. So it makes it acceptable. This message is, God hath given us eternal life, and that life is in his Son. He that hath the Son hath life, and he that hath not the Son of God hath not life. We would interpret this message. Okay. So for example, we would interpret this message as, put your faith in God, trust in God, you will be going to heaven and live your life in trust of God. These are kind of the practices that I grew up in, and religion was a big part of my upbringing. When I found my first deck of tarot cards, I know that that was not something that was particularly welcome, because tarot cards and that type of practice is very against Roman Catholic practices, and that's not really encouraged. Though I really had that interest and I always had the pull to astrology, I was always the one asking questions of what people's sign was. I'm a lot more into it now, and I still call myself more of like an astrology enthusiast rather than an astrologist, because I know that there's so much more in that world that I don't have the knowledge on, but I do absolutely love astrology, and it's something I've loved from a very young age, and different spiritual practices that I wanted to get into tarot, but it's not something that was particularly fostered, or I didn't also know a lot of people in my environment who did that. My first interaction with tarot cards as I know them today and as I study them today was at 16 years old. Then there was an interest, but definitely not as pushed as later on. Back in 2021, I had a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who pulled a card for me from the Kim's Krantz archetype deck, which is still one of my favorite decks. I have a wide collection of decks that I've accumulated since that first one, but there are just a few that you'll never forget, and that is definitely one of them. I own not only the original, but I also own the pocket version. So that's something that later on, maybe we can also look into in another type of video, where I can show you my tarot deck collection and my oracle deck collection. I tell myself every time that I'm done, but yeah, that hasn't been the case yet, because I feel connected to another deck every time. I'd love to have a video where I walk you through my collection and have a story for each of them. But I digress. The archetype, the Wild Unknown collection, was my first introduction to tarot oracle world. Purchased myself a copy, and the rest is absolutely history. I started reading for myself, I started reading for my husband, I started reading for friends and family. It just sparked something. I can't describe it in any other way than kind of like a plug, right? Like you plug something into the socket and it just lights up whatever it is that you need. Well, that's how it felt communicating with spirit and using the tarot deck to gain not only insight on myself, but to help others gain clarity on whatever question that they may have. When that started being developed, I have this tendency sometimes to want to turn my hobbies and what I love into something lucrative or into a business or into an idea. And I love to work, get involved in projects and create things. And for me, my work has to have meaning. There has to be heart behind what I do. And with tarot reading and with starting that, I knew that it was something that I wanted to pursue, but I also remember feeling a little bit of a hold back when people would offer, for example, to pay for readings or would offer to give me something in exchange for a reading. And I remember feeling it doesn't feel honest, right? Or it doesn't feel right to be taking money for my communication with spirit and for being able to provide these people with this service. Like I do it because it's a gift that I've developed and I love that, but I don't know if I feel comfortable taking money for it. And so that's a theme that's gonna come up a little bit, because a lot of how Nubian Divinity is expanded definitely requires for me to unpack that, especially around the end of life work that we'll get into. This story has many branches, so if you find me jumping from one point to another, it's just because I'm trying to kind of capture the essence of it, because it's never so simple as this is what Nubian Divinity is. There's my heart behind it, there's my beliefs behind it and my value. And so it will take a little bit more time and it will be extensive in explaining truly what it is, because without this backstory, it's gonna be hard to completely grasp the essence of it. So when I started getting comfortable with getting ready to receive some type of remuneration for the work that I was doing, I decided to start my business. And I thought, okay, I will start doing readings for other people. I want this to become a part of a service that I offer, and I'm going to call it Nubian Divinity. So Nubian Divinity came to me just like that. The name Nubian is, of course, an homage and an inspiration from the Nubian people of Egypt, who ancient Egypt has a huge role also in how I've sort of developed this love for spirituality. As a child, I was very passionate about ancient Egypt, and I still have, I think, across the house, little beetles. I had these pharaoh books. As children, there's always these interests for these various things. Some could be dinosaurs, some could be trucks, some could be travel. And for me, it was ancient Egypt and Greek mythology. The word Nubian in itself is an homage to that side of me that's helped to kind of lead the path to what it is that I'm doing today. And it's also a representation of Black people, Black civilization that was respected, harmonious, community-based, very successul, and it's to uplift that. And then the divinity aspect is an ode to the divine, to the fact that I do readings. I believe very strongly in spirituality, in a higher power. It's what is at the base and at the foundation of my business. And so that kind of embodies those two elements that are very representative to me and representative to what it is that I'm trying to bring to the world. And so that's how Nubian Divinity came about. I love the name. There have been moments where I've doubted, is that the right direction? Will it attract the right people? Again, questions that you ask yourself when you're moving into that process, but it's stuck with me since the time that I've created the business, and as it expands, it still feels appropriate. That's where Nubian Divinity comes from as a name. Then eventually, as it evolved, I was also doing consulting work on the side. So what I do as well is I'm in equity, diversity, and inclusion consultant, which seems an ironic thing to be in this world right now at this moment as I film this video because of what's going on with our neighbors in the States. But again, I don't want to digress. That's not what this video is about, but it's worth mentioning. This is what I do as well. I go to different organizations to provide facilitation sessions and to have conversations around equity and diversity, and of course inclusion, and explain what it truly is, what it means, not creating more of a divide, but actually bringing people together, getting to a sense of understanding, getting to a common place, and just realize that a lot of the times our fears are based in what we don't know and what we don't understand. Those two things were separate at the time, where I was doing spiritual work and I was doing equity work. And eventually I remember thinking that I wanted to mix the two. I wanted my spiritual work to influence, I guess, or also impact in certain ways the equity work and the community building that I was creating in my equity consulting. Again, a bit about my history and my background. I am a first generation Haitian, so both my parents were born in Haiti, and I was raised in Canada. Haiti has a very complex history. Haitians are very, very proud people, proud of our story, proud of our land, proud of our heritage, proud of what we've accomplished. I mean, Haiti is the first independent Black nation in the world, and it's the catalyst to a lot of revolutions that have led to freedom throughout the years, and it continues to be brought up. That aspect of my heritage has always been really strong and something that I was very proud of. With wanting to merge spiritual work and my equity work, I realized that it mirrored my understanding of the Haitian Revolution, where community, spirituality, voodoo in particular, but also different types of rituals and practices really played a role, whether it was a part of what caused the revolution to happen, whether it was just, the catalyst that brought people together, whatever the result ended up being in freedom. For me, and this is something that I've heard said before by Jujube, which is another spiritual worker I follow. We do very similar work and their content really speaks to me, but I've heard them say that spiritual work is liberation work. And that resonated with me, and I stand by that. And in the Haitian history and the Haitian Revolution, that's been a prime example of how spirituality, belief in faith, creating community, inner knowing, self-expression, and self-discovery brings about liberation and brings about freedom. With those two themes in mind that I had separately, I thought, okay, I can do spiritual work and equity work because the two are incredibly linked and it makes sense. Now, is my space or where I'm at open to that type of thought or open to that type of practice? Big question mark, and also a huge pause in, do I move forward? Do I not move forward with this? But I really believe in this idea and I trust that it makes sense. And I've seen in others around me and also in other examples of history where those two have merged. Religion and social movement have always been tied, whether in a good way or in a negative way. In my practices or in my facilitation sessions, bring some of my knowing of spirituality and some of my understanding of that, and also utilize that in systems that are struggling with understanding what it's like being in community, what that truly means, the benefits of it, knowing about the other, respecting the other, and seeing how our differences with sort of a self-understanding and a self-confidence and work done with yourself, how merging different ideas and different people can bring us closer. Now we've brought in spirituality and equity. The story is getting long, but I think everything's coming together. Now the last piece that has come together in this trifecta, because something again that I love is I love the number 3. I've always been 3 in my family. It's my mom, my dad, myself. In terms of my immediate family, it was always 3. I do things in 3. I feel like things happen in 3 all the time. We also have, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in that order. Yeah, there's multiple examples of that. So it didn't surprise me that I then wanted to add a third option into my Nubian Divinity practice, or not that I wanted to, but that it's sort of naturally expanded to this third option. It is my end of life work. So now we have spiritual work, we have equity work, and we have end of life work. And so how do those three connect? I am currently a certified death doula. It's something that I'm still in practice, and I think that I will always be in the practice of this work until it's my time to go. I've always had a very small family. I have chosen family that has expanded my circle of family, but in terms of immediate blood family, it's very, very small, and even smaller with the ones that I grew up with. And I was the only child of that circle, of that family. My family didn't shy away from explaining to me or having the conversation that eventually they would be gone, right? And gone forever. Like, there was this belief of an afterlife and whatnot, so that brings comfort a little bit, but the physical self would no longer be there. And since being the only child, you never know, but you kind of hope that your family will pass before you in the ideal order of things. This was something that I was always very conscious of and very aware of, and I know that over time it's something that I've learned to accept, but it was quite difficult knowing that, okay, like maybe I'm gonna be alone. But that thought has shifted, and again, there will be more videos or more conversations around that, because even though I may not have blood relatives, I know I won't be alone. Sometimes you can have huge families and still feel very much alone and still feel like you're doing all the work by yourself. So it's very subjective. You can't help but feel how you feel. I remember feeling a lot of sort of angst around that, and my grandparents ended up passing away, and we dealt with that. Recently, my aunt passed away, so the family just keeps kind of getting smaller and smaller. And I know that I was interested in doing that work as a form of being prepared for the unavoidable effect of death. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can change, so I might as well be prepared. It's like on big Virgo energy. I need to contextualize this feeling, so let me become an expert on it. It's a form of anticipatory grief a little bit as to what drew me to want to do this work, to feel a little bit more prepared and more together for what it is that awaits inevitably. Also, just learn more about it and sort of offer this type of comfort and peace, I guess, that I found from knowing that this all ends to other people in a way that feels not like in your face, right? Just kind of be there, because a lot of the times it's nothing that we can do. It's just about being there and offering an ear to listen to or some form of support. And then the other reason why I also wanted to jump into death work, aside from sort of my own experience, was I wanted to be a little bit more equipped for clients that would come to me looking for comfort or reassurance on the spiritual side after someone had passed away. I would love to eventually get into mediumship and sort of tap a little bit more into that world. I think that's also inevitable with the three branches that I've chosen to work in. Right now, that's not how I market myself. That's not what I present myself as. So I wanted to be really cautious with how I approach clients who were grieving, because when you grieve, especially a death, can put you in a very vulnerable state. And I wanted to make sure, though I felt very much qualified and in alignment with my truth and how I was making clients feel, like there was no ulterior motive, but I just wanted to feel extra confident and extra prepared in how I would approach that. And I also felt like that work made sense to bring together, to have a death doula certification and then be able to also offer that type of spiritual work, to know a little bit more about what to say when someone is in that position and what it is that they're seeking for, especially when they come for spiritual work, right? It's wanting to find guidance again, sort of that direction again, is how do I continue on my life without this person, and helping people through that big transition. And it's something that I felt I had the capacity to hold on to for other people. And I'm not afraid of hard conversations. I'm not afraid of people who are going through difficult things. And I think that death is something that we shy away from a lot, especially in our culture. There's no need to, because yeah, I mean, shoot, if you're hearing it first time from me, like that sucks, but we're all gonna die at some point. And so you just might as well like have it out there, be honest about it, and know your truth, and then live in accordance to knowing that. One thing I also want to explain is sort of what a death doula is. So a lot of people will ask questions, like when I tell them, oh, they're like, what do you do? And I kind of pick like which one, because Nubian Divinity is so vast. I tend to pick one of them before I dive into the thread of what the entirety of my business is. But when I tell people that I do death work or I'm a death doula, first of all, they always hear death, which is, maybe it's the way I pronounce it, or they don't even think about it, or it's not the word that comes first to mind, because that's not what you want to be thinking about. When I explain to them what a death doula is, it's essentially a birth doula, right? So we know what birth doulas do. They, for the most part, help mothers or people who carry children bring life into the world. And essentially a death doula just assists the dying and the family for this next transition of their life, and then the beginning of the life of the people that are left behind. You assist a family, you assist the dying in that process. So for the most part, that's what the work entails. And there are different branches, there are different death doulas for specific religious beliefs, specific cultural backgrounds, for people of different identities, different sexual identities. There's so much broadness in death. And so that's why then I thought, oh, it is the perfect addition to what it is that I already offer, because dying is this very spiritual experience, not only for the person who is transitioning into a different part, right? Whatever it is that awaits on the other side, that's not the point, it's what's happening right now. So clearly they're also going through a transition. People are also going through this giant change. There's so much bureaucracy attached to how we die. Sometimes people can't afford caskets, people can't afford to have an extensive funeral service, and it's a lot of these things on how you die is required by law to follow certain protocols, but those cost money. It brought in this extra layer of the fact that even dying becomes a social issue, and we all die, but we don't all die the same. That was the click into the moment where I thought, okay, then this is the missing piece to all of it. It's compassion, inner knowing, connection to spirit, connection to self in the spiritual work, how that entails and how you see your own privilege, your own opportunities and compared to other people. So the social, the equity aspect of things, not only at work, but in your everyday life. And then what's the legacy that you leave behind? Or how is it that you recognize the choices that you have in your own death, whether it be in a hospital, whether it be like how that ties to how you've lived your life, the community you surround yourself with. So even then, the definition of a good death or how you end your life can be in part also a reflection of your own status and some of the injustices that happen within society and like how we can tie those together. As you can see, I could go on about this for forever. I have many thoughts, and when I think about that, it's like, okay, well, will Nubian Divinity do activism work, or will I do about that? And I don't know, right? I don't know just yet. The business is still very new. It's still very fresh. I'm extremely passionate about the three branches that I've brought together, and they tie so beautifully together as well. What I do now is I offer these three things separately, but they all influence somehow one piece or another. My justice work is tied to my death work, that's tied to my spiritual work, that's tied back to my justice work. So it's this, I see this infinity loop between those three elements, and that's what I've decided to make Nubian Divinity. Okay, how can you find me? What is it that I'll be offering? What's next? Good question. I will continue to be posting on socials. I would like to turn my content a little bit more educational. For example, I traveled recently and there were conversations around death and how death is perceived in Vietnam, for example, or in Thailand. And that's really fascinating to me because, again, we all die, but we don't all die the same, and we're not all honored the same, and the practices are different, and tapping into kind of maybe different cultural observations and conversations around death is something that I'd like to bring forward. More educational content around social work as well, getting a little bit more involved in that. And of course, what started Nubian Divinity in the first place, which are readings. I still offer a variety of readings. That is where my heart is and will always be. I love to interact with clients and to provide clarity through communication with spirit. I covered as much as I could, but my educational background, if it matters, I tell myself I am a communicator by nature, first and foremost, and then by trade, secondly. So that's what I studied. And I just find that tarot readings and oracle cards and using different divination tools is like speaking different languages that all lead me to getting messages from the divine and universe, spirit, God, however we want to refer to it, but it's like the higher power. It's like a different means of communication, and I love being able to do that with my clients, and also teaching. Eventually I'd like to get, again, so the education piece keeps coming up quite a bit, but get into teaching others how to use their intuition, how to read tarot. It's something that I strongly believe anyone can do, but I believe anyone can do anything. It's just a matter of where your interest is and where your gift is and where you put in your time and effort to practice. So for me, working my intuition is like going to the gym, right? I work out my intuition, which is why it's strong and why I'm capable of using it to help others and communicate with others on some of their next steps, or helping them strengthen their own intuition to trust their own voice, because we all have one. I just work mine out and I help you work yours out. So think about it as like a personal trainer for your intuition is how I see it. I also still do facilitation sessions. So if you know someone or within your organization, you would love to have me come as a guest speaker, do presentations about anything regarding equity, diversity, inclusion in your workplace, in your group setting, at your event, wherever you would see it be fit, you can definitely contact me. I'll have all my information on how you can reach me on my website linked below. And I think that's it. I feel like I've poured my heart out in this video. This was way overdue, and it was meant to be out there because I just want people to understand what this vision is and what it means to me, and to be a part of the journey from today as it continues to evolve, because there's been a lot going on since its founding days of 2021, around that time, and 4 years have gone by. Let's see what else Nubian Divinity has in store. Thanks so much for your time. If you made it to the end of the video, you're a real one. Thanks again. I'll see you in another video. Bye.